Okay, welcome everybody. Today is February 1st, and this is the first working group batch meeting uh, since we changed the times, since we added the new time slot. So very happy to host it. Um, as you already know, this meeting is recorded and it will be uploaded to the public to see. So beware of that and beware of the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. Um, so today we have one design topic, but I think Vanessa wanted to, um, if I understand correctly, you wanted some general guidelines about how the meeting is run. And is that correct, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think I'm not familiar with all of the new folks here, but I do think that it would be good to have an overview of how the meeting is run, how people, if they want to present something, for example, how they go about doing that, how the structure of this document works, just kind of the logistical details, assuming that folks are new.
Yeah. Well, I guess let me start with um, what working group batch is about. Um, in general, we want to enable all these kind of workloads to run on Kubernetes. So that's the high level goal. You can, I won't go over every detail, but you can read the charter here if you want to learn more specifics. A working group is is a forum that tries to bring um, leads from different leads and participants, community members from different um, backgrounds or different areas of expertise within the Kubernetes project. Um, officially the working group is composed by these six, so scheduling, of course, also apps, auto scaling, node. But in reality, we touch on multiple other things. For example, storage is something that comes up from time to time. But for now, we don't focus too much on storage. The meeting is run by organizers. I'm one of them, but we kind of rotate to host the meeting. So we decide what items, what the agenda would look like, which items should be postponed for following meetings because there won't be enough time, and to give we also give the chance to people to ask questions or cut them if they're taking too much time or something like that. Um, yeah, so basically running the meeting so that we are productive. Maybe a little bit of well, we also have the meeting notes here. The meeting notes, unfortunately, they only record what we covered, but not exactly which decisions we took. But I think as a summary, we've been mostly discussing topics such as queue development, job development, the job API, job sets. More recently, we've been discussing dynamic resource allocation in this working group. But there is no continuous topic. People can just put here in the agenda the item they want to discuss in the next meeting, and that's where we are gonna spend some time on. Not only people developing Kubernetes are welcome, also end users or anybody that has a use case, or they are perhaps maintainers of a different project. I don't know, workflow managers or Kubeflow. All those maintainers. Some of those maintainers have come to the meeting as well to discuss whatever Kubernetes is not or is lacking some feature that would make their lives of these projects easier. So I think that covers the basics. Vanessa, you have a question?
Yeah, so to go back to the markdown you were showing, just to clarify, just some terms in case folks aren't familiar. A SIG is a special interest group, I think. And so the basic idea is that a working group might have more than one SIG that is relevant to what they're doing. And also the idea is that if new SIGs are developed, for example, maybe batch would be oriented to include more in the future. Is that what distinguishes like a working group versus a special interest group? And then, for example, why wouldn't batch be a special interest group?
So I think the fundamental thing is that a SIG owns code. The SIG is responsible for maintaining one or more components within Kubernetes. A working group is a bit more of an advisory group or a horizontal group that discusses multiple topics throughout the project and gives some recommendations to the SIGs to execute on. However, this working group in particular has been operating in a hybrid, let's call it hybrid manner. So there is a lot of design discussions in this working group. But yeah, whether the working group would evolve into a SIG, for example, it's an open question that we haven't sit down to for a while, so it might come up in the future. Hope that answers the question.
Just to add one more point to Aldo's comment here. So typically, working group spans across multiple SIGs also. That's something that has come out in some of the discussions. And you can see here, like the stakeholder SIGs that we have is SIG apps, auto scaling, node, and scheduling. So that itself shows that, the working group is kind of spanning kind of the horizontal space and covering multiple SIGs, and so there are multiple stakeholders from various SIGs, and at least some representatives of them can be present in the working group.
One more question. I promise it's my last for this introduction part. So now that we have 2 meetings, is there sort of a plan for orchestrating like between them, or is it mostly the idea is going to be that we're talking about a common thread of ideas, and whether they get scheduled to one meeting or the other really depends on the person that's doing the presentation. And then folks that are from different, time zones, essentially is what it comes down to, can watch the videos on YouTube to kind of catch up with what the other meeting did.
That is correct. We won't be repeating topics unless the presenter is willing to repeat. Yes, folks are encouraged to review the recordings, and maybe for something particularly important, us organizers will choose to bring a summary or discuss specific points. But in general, yeah, it depends on where the people that are bringing up the topic are. Yes. So with that, I think we can close this topic. Okay, one last question, if there is any. I don't see any hands. Okay, we'll move on to the next topic, which is brought up by Daniel here. You can start sharing your screen, or
yeah, I don't think I have screen sharing powers. I don't know if it's really necessary though. You can just click on the link if you want. That's all I really want to talk about. Yeah, this is just pretty small topic. It's not like a presentation or anything. So just for context, I'm one of the developers of JobSet, which is kind of like a higher order API. It's like a CRD and custom controller that allows the user to manage a group of Kubernetes jobs as a unit. It's useful for distributed ML training and HPC use cases. And one of the kind of features that is being prioritized right now to work on has a dependency on this particular issue that we have in front of us right here. Basically, what we need is some way to be able to distinguish different types of job failures so that we can more intelligently react to them and not kind of have these broad, sweeping restart and retry policies that may not necessarily be the most efficient for particular types of failures. And right now, okay, so basically, there's a KEP in the job set repo for a more configurable failure policy API. And there's a couple use cases, basically a couple fields that we'd like to add to our API that would depend on this particular feature being added to the underlying job API. So basically, we have like a dependency on like a future feature in our underlying infrastructure. And so kind of what I wanted to seek guidance on here is one, I wanted to check and just kind of gauge the room as far as if there's any like feedback on the proposal for surfacing. I don't know if we should go through the proposal in detail, but basically it's to surface the, basically allow a pod failure policy to have like an optional reason field. So when the pod failure policy is triggered and we fail the job, there can be some more specific reason attached to the condition that is added to the job that failed than just pod failure policy, so that we can distinguish between different types of jobs that have been triggered by pod failure policy. And based on the initial few comments and feedback on the proposal, it seems like there's a decent amount of buy-in. And so I guess the first thing I want to do is just kind of open the question to the room. If anybody has any feedback on this or any pushback on this or any reason why we shouldn't do this, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was if we are all aligned on moving forward with this, what concrete steps do I need to take and people do I need to involve to get it done as quickly as possible, basically? Because I did work a little bit on the job controller like a year ago, but I don't quite remember. JobSet has its own release schedule and it's kind of independent of the core upstream Kubernetes APIs. And so I just want to make sure that I involve the right people and get through the process as quickly as possible. Because ideally, I would love if we could get this change included in the next release, which is 1.30. But I understand that maybe there's some timelines or deadlines that are coming up, and that might not be possible. And so that would require me then to revise the KEP to basically exclude those two particular fields and then add them later on once this is supported. So that's kind of the gist of it. And yeah, so does anybody have any initial thoughts on the proposal in its current state? Yeah, this.
Vanessa?
Yeah, I think I'd want to step back and first ask kind of the folks here who has reviewed this proposal and could add feedback. And if people haven't, maybe it makes sense to provide a couple of the use cases that we talked about there for when this would actually be relevant. And then kind of the other distinction that I think I remember we talked about is what would belong on the level of job set versus what would need to go into the underlying job. Because those were kind of two, I know we were having trouble figuring out the use cases for like the job fail and the other ones were okay.
That makes sense. So just to address the first point about the use cases this would enable. So in particular, the use case this would enable is so JobSet has a concept of a replicated job, which basically creates multiple instances from the same job template. And you can manage those as like a unit. And essentially, right now our JobSet restart policies kind of operate at the JobSet level. And, there's not really a way to, for example, within one replicated job, if two jobs fail with different container exit codes, so indicating some different type of failure happened, or the application code itself, to kind of make things more concrete, Vanessa was highlighting one potential use case where in her HPC applications, the application code itself, depending on the simulations being ran, where each job represents a different simulation, which is started with different initial parameters. It may exit with one code indicating that the initial parameters were junk and we should not even restart this job, not retry it. Or it could exit with a different code indicating that the initial parameters were good and we actually do want to retry the simulation to get some other result or something along those lines. And right now, we don't really have any infrastructure to enable this use case. The closest thing is the pod failure policy, which the user could potentially define a pod failure policy for one particular container exit code, but then we can't then have like a different pod failure policy with like a different container exit code, because the reason attached to that job condition when it fails the job is still going to just say pod failure policy. And so we just need some mechanism to distinguish between those two different types of exit codes, basically. And so the proposal, at least the first option, there's two options, but the first one that most people seem to like more in the initial comments was to simply add an optional reason field to the pod failure policy rule. So by default, the default behavior is preserved, nothing changes, but optionally a user can add a reason field specifying that they say, okay, if this pod failure policy is the thing that triggers this job failure, then please use this custom reason that I have defined here, so that my application built on top of the job API can distinguish between different types of failures. Yeah, so that's hopefully that addresses those points. Was there anything I missed?
I could throw in more use cases, but I think the one you provided is pretty good. I also think it's important to consider that I feel like we're sort of getting started in the workflow space. So basically, if this is one step in a workflow, imagine now that you have a workflow tool that is submitting many of these steps to a workload manager, and so Q might be scheduling that, but that's a separate detail. We would want to make sure that, for example, the reason or some metadata attribute, enough metadata is exposed that could be queried by the workflow tool so that it can also make the next step decision. For example, maybe in that simulation use case, maybe you could kind of embed the logic totally in job set, but really probably you're going to have some of the logic embedded in the workflow tool about like, okay, when these criteria are satisfied, then I'm going to kick off this thing or this thing. So there's the high level idea I'm saying is that we need to make sure that whatever decision we have here, we're exposing some of that information programmatically back to whatever is actually requesting the execution.
Okay, so you're saying like propagate that information up to the job set level so that it can be queried out by some workflow manager? Is that did I understand that correctly?
It doesn't necessarily, it just has to be propagated to some level that is programmatically accessible by various SDKs that interact with Kubernetes.
I think if as long as it's available as a condition on the job, it would still be programmatically accessible, right?
Yeah.
So,
So that would satisfy the use case. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
My only question is whether I see two alternatives here for implementing this idea of having this string that is machine readable. So one is, of course, as stated here, putting the reason in the condition. Which might be okay, but we could also consider just adding an extra field in the status that contains the pod failure policy reason or something along those lines.
Extra field in the job status?
As part of the job status directly. But I don't see much of a problem with using the reason itself. So back to the question about how to get this done. Well, unfortunately, Maciek couldn't join today, but this is SIG apps domain, so it needs to be decided by SIG apps. So I would check with Maciek once he's back from vacation. You also need an API reviewer. Well, that can be deferred. You can wait until next week. or sorry, until after the enhancements freeze to reach out to a API reviewer. That yeah, they likely won't have like, this is not super controversial, so you don't need an API reviewer from the beginning, but you need a production readiness reviewer, and that is there aren't that many people, so you need to involve one as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think I remember somebody in Poland reviewed my last one. I can't remember his name.
Wojtek, probably.
Yes.
Yes. So those are basically, you need two people right now. You need Maciek and a production readiness reviewer. That's it to proceed. Now there is one cap ongoing that is very similar to yours.
Really? Is it the job success policy?
Yeah, and Vanessa is also involved, I think, in the success policy. Is Yuki here in the meeting? No? Okay. So I was just reviewing this cap right now, but policy success. Wait.
Chrome history, don't fail us now. Just kidding.
Oh, means yes, this cap. So this cap is adding what we did for failure policies, adding it to well, failure policy is about determining when something fails, but success policy is the opposite. Sometimes you just want a job to finish soon, just because, I don't know, the head pod finished. So the head pod is enough signal to determine that the entire job is complete. So why did I bring this up? Just because since you're already adding, you want to add this reason for failure, you might want to have a reason for success as well, right? And to the point of Vanessa, where, well, depending on the success reason, you might want to trigger different steps in a workflow or something like that. So it might be a good addition just to sync with Yuki, make sure there is a reason in that field as well. And the two caps are in sync. But other than that, I don't have any concerns or anything. It seems straightforward to me.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea to kind of keep the success policy in sync and have similar semantics and stuff. So as far as deadlines, I just did a quick check. So enhancements freeze, as far as when it mentions enhancements freeze February 9th, does that mean the KEP needs to be accepted and merged before February 9th, or it just needs to be okay? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then can you just remind me, and then maybe if there's other this could be useful for anybody else who's a little newer to the group as well. Maciek's role, you said I need an API reviewer. So he's part of SIGOps. What is does he fulfill the API reviewer role, or
No.
Okay, because I was thinking if not, I think Jordan Liggett or Michelle could
yes, either, or other people. There is David Eads. I think David is reviewing this one. Yep, success completion. So I would probably suggest that you reach out to David.
Okay. You said David. What's his last name?
Eads, EADS.
ADS. Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, just so he has all the context here, so it would be easier for him to review.
Okay.
But again, an API reviewer is not strictly necessary during enhancement scripts, only if the SIG lead says that. If the SIG lead doesn't feel too confident about something, he will request. He or she will request the API reviewer. Otherwise, you will need an API reviewer, but it can be deferred to code review.
Implementation, right?
Okay.
Gotcha. So essentially on the actual KEP, we just need SIG lead reviewer, PR reviewer, then that'll be merged, and then we move on to the implementation, and that will involve an API reviewer, and that should be it.
Correct.
Okay.
Vanessa, you have a question?
Okay, dumb question, because when I click on these links to like comment, I don't actually look at like the repository. So this one is scoped for Kubernetes batch job, which is in core Kubernetes. The other one was for job set, which is not core. It's what repository is that? So my question is, when
This
you're
is
doing
job set. Sorry.
job set. So it's Kubernetes SIGs as opposed to Kubernetes. Do the enhancements for the Kubernetes SIG and then core Kubernetes go through that same process, or are there different kind of enhancement repositories? I never thought about this.
One clarification, this feature request is for Kubernetes. Because we're enhancing the job API to, well, add the reason, and job set is going to be a user of this feature.
Okay.
So that's one point. So this needs to go through API, through the enhancements protocol. To your question about Kubernetes 6, this is a sub-project of Kubernetes. Sub-projects govern themselves more loosely, and that kind of depends on the sub-project. Yeah, so generally there is an owner of the sub-project. For small projects, sub-projects, people might just want like a reasonable issue description before implementing something. But more popular or like more sub-projects that are at a production ready level, they will require something like this, like a full design doc like this one. So job set is in this category where it has a level of production readiness, so we cannot just merge whatever. We have to think about metrics and API stability and so on. Same happens for Q and other sub-projects as well. So again, in summary, it depends on the sub-project, but for the sub-projects we are dealing with in this working group, it is actually, we expect production readiness designs. So production ready designs.
Gotcha. So job set has its own little family of KEPs, and probably what usually happens is someone will want something for job set and they write their KEP, and then it's like, oh, we need this in upstream Kubernetes somewhere. So then this KEP leads to like an upstream KEP and they depend on each other, and then you orchestrate everything and they somehow come together and you get the final thing that you wanted. So there are kind of two spaces. There's more than two spaces of KEPs. It's funny because I've been like reading these for a long time and my brain didn't make like the separation of the two KEP namespaces, but I see it now. So thank you.
Okay, yes. Yes, and that again, that's the point of the working group, to try to align different projects across the Kubernetes project. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question, if I can ask. My name is Sridhar Biki. I'm a new member of the group. I'm from ANSYS. We are a simulation software company. So I met Aldo briefly at KubeCon during the Q presentation. So the question I have is, I'm not sure it's the right group, but I'm hoping I can get some help from the group in here. So we are trying to build a secure multi-tenant cluster, Kubernetes EKS cluster that would allow us to run simulation workloads, and we need to support arbitrary code execution, like something similar to what GKE Sandbox provides. So is this a good platform to discuss that, or do I have to put that on agenda for another week or something?
This working group might not have much to say. So it's basically a security question, if I understand correctly.
There used to be a multi-cluster, multi-tenant group, working group in Kubernetes, but I think that group no longer exists. So I'm just trying to figure out where can we get the help in building a multi-tenant secure Kubernetes cluster that supports arbitrary code execution.
Right. So, well, you still have SIG security that you can reach out to.
I thought
there
there was
might
still a
be-
multi-cluster group. It's just that they didn't meet in like the beginning of like after the holidays, but I still have that meeting on my calendar. It's like on Tuesday morning or something.
Is that a multi-cluster or a multi-tenant? We are looking for someone who can we can bounce ideas or see what's happening in the ecosystem in terms of secure multi-tenant clusters.
Right. So yeah, I guess you're looking for multi-tenant, not multi-cluster.
Yep. Are you familiar with GKE Sandbox and the gvisor project?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'm in HPC, we're definitely familiar with multi-tenancy, and it kind of comes down to an issue of having like two very different models for representing kind of permissions. So like namespaces and RBAC versus like actual user accounts. And so I think probably what's needed is discussion to figure out, given these two very different models that exist, it's not like one is emerging, they're both very solid models, trying to find what is the intersection between those two things? What is something that you could do? I guess in HPC, what ultimately kind of happens is you have like every flavor of kind of authentication, many snowflake authentication systems that you can imagine that basically do some kind of mapping. And that's really an approach that is taken because like that is like the only way that you can figure out. But I don't think anyone has thought of like an actual elegant way that is good enough so that multiple centers or companies or whatever have been like, this is the best approach to take.
Okay.
So that's
I this might require a kind of in-depth discussion for me to explain the exact case and see.
You're cutting up a little.
Do you want me to put this on agenda for next call? Or? Sorry. So do you want me to put next call so that I can come with some examples on what we're trying to do, or
maybe
do we have? I don't want to.
What? Yeah. So let me maybe put an item. We can ask what other people think about the topic, but I don't think in general this audience has dealt much with security.
I feel like
so,
those kinds of topics. My colleague who I'm talking to next hour discusses those kinds of things in SIG-Node fairly often. So that's sort of where I would go to chat with people about that stuff, or maybe SIG-Auth.
You're suggesting SIG-Node, you said?
Yeah, I think that's the SIG that he has been doing work on. It's like user namespacing kind of issues, and like Vanessa, you're sort of shaking your head, but like we've been like pushing various fixes for this level of author namespacing. And I think that some of the conversations are going on in Signode. That's as much as I know. But
Okay,
I don't know that it should come here, is the thing. That doesn't, I think everyone is saying, no, this isn't the place.
Can I raise I'm gonna disagree a little bit. The reason is because, well, I do think security is relevant here. At the end of the day, when you're deploying something production, you don't want to get that wrong and, you know, whatever. But I think in the sense that at the simplest level, when you submit a job, you are submitting it as some entity. And in that, the information about that entity is going to be represented in something like Q. It's going to be represented when you're launching your batch job. I think it would be okay to at least have a discussion here, like an item for one meeting, where we just talk through some of the use cases and figure out what components of that might be scoped to something that's relevant to batch. Not all of it will be, but I think there will be some of it that will be.
One point is that, well, we need to figure out who in the Kubernetes project is off your microphone. What was I saying? Yes, we need to figure out who in the Kubernetes project is most familiar with this topic, because if they don't attend this meeting, then it might be a wasted meeting.
Okay, so let me do something. For the next call, I will try to put an agenda and a little description of what I want to bring up. Maybe that will make some relevant people to attend, and we can have a discussion. Okay, thanks for the time. And I'll also try to attend the SIG node and see what they can help me with. Okay, thank you.
I would suggest you start actually there in Signode or SIG security, but most probably Signode, just to get a sense of who the experts might be. And once you have an idea, we can bring it back to working group batch to discuss any specifics that could be around, well, AIML, batch, etc.
I really appreciate.
A lot of the points about sandboxes are not specific to AIML, right? There might be some, like, I don't know, accelerators. There might be some specifics, but I don't know where people are at in Signode, for example. It might be a better starting point there than here, just to get a sense.
Okay, sure. Definitely, I will ask around. I will gather more information, and maybe if I have something more specific to the group, I will come back to you. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that, we can close the meeting, unless there is any last minute questions.
Yeah, I have a last minute kind of prompt to throw out to people. In the next year or whatever, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in workflows. So taking, again, one of those steps and, you know, thinking more of a DAG or a state machine. And so I generally want to kind of prompt people to start thinking about workflows. And I'm interested, so maybe we could talk about it, you know, asynchronously in Slack. Like, what are people doing now for their workflow tools when they want to integrate with Q, for example, or they want to integrate generally with the Kubernetes ecosystem. Like I want to put together like a list of those things, and then I want to kind of talk about them in more detail. At least I'd hope to.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you have a prototype for an integration of Q with SnakeMake.
Yeah.
So if you want to do a presentation about that kind of topic is also welcome in the working group.
Yeah, I definitely think I will. Cool.
All right.
We definitely need an entirely new workflow engine in Wasm. I just feel it. I was going to say I'm excited that this time has opened up, because there's been a bunch of much like the cross-pollination between the early Kubernetes batch working group and this later batch working group. I run the CNCF batch working group, and there hasn't been much crossover there. And I was talking with Aldo about the work that we've been doing on trying to put a batch landscape together, and I'd love to, at some point, talk through with this group, like just show what we've been working on. I would love input on all of that stuff, because it's all related, and yes, that's all.
All one big
Okay.
hairball, Kubernetes landscape hairball, rolling down a hill somewhere.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, that will be an excellent topic as well, Alex.
Cool.
Okay. With that, 2 minutes left. Okay, we'll close here. Thank you all for coming. Next meeting in 2 weeks is in the other time zone. So if you can make it up that early, I'll see you there. All right.
Good to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day.